Hello. Are you ready for story time? Okay. So awesome. This video is brought to you by all my Patreon supporters. Go Team Awesome! Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking to you about why I came to Japan and why I left Japan the first time around. So for those of you wondering why I even chose Japan, first I have to tell you why I decided to leave Canada. So in Canada, after I finished my university, I was working for about 6 months at an advertising agency. I wasn't doing anything creative. I was pretty much like a secretary, I guess. I watered plants, made coffee, answered phones, delivered mail, that kind of stuff. It was an entry-level job, so I shouldn't have expected much. But since I had done like 5 years of university, and I had like a media communications kind of background, I thought I would get something better, and the pay wasn't very good either. So I quit, and I decided to go back to school for 1 year for like a postgraduate kind of certificate. Kaide decided to join us for story time, right? Anyway, so at university, no? You don't want to hear story time? No? Okay, alright. So I decided to go back for 1 year for like a postgraduate certificate kind of thing from a different college, from Centennial College, which came with like a little internship, like a 2 months internship at a company. And I was placed in a hospital as a public relations person, assistant to the assistant of public relations. And I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but while I was in school, someone planted a seed.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate.
And I'm going to come back to that story as well. But the main thing is, ever since I was in high school, I've always wanted to not be in Canada. I mean, I love Canada. Canada's a great country. I love my home and my town, Toronto. But I always wanted to live abroad somewhere. So when I got into university, I was applying for this an exchange program, you would call it, like a 1 year exchange with a different university. And I used to go to York University, and there was University of York in York, England. Because of my kind of family, my parents, they're very protective, and I was like really sheltered, so I wasn't really allowed to do much. Financially, I wouldn't be able to afford it myself, and my parents were not willing to let me leave the house. Actually, when I was in high school and I was applying for universities, I actually wanted to go live on campus and live somewhere else. I was thinking of McMaster University or something. But my parents, of course, they didn't want me to leave home. They wanted me to commute from home. And also financially, they didn't have the capability to help me. So I had no choice, so I had to stay in my home with my parents and then go to York University. That was the first kind of fail where I was hoping to like leave home, but I couldn't. Then my second chance was the University of York in York, England. I think once university was over and I started working, I realized like I'm not enjoying my life, not because of the job itself. The job isn't that bad. It's just because I haven't seen any of the world. I've been on vacation to a couple of places. Like I went to Cuba and I went to America, but I'd never left North American area. So I wanted to just go somewhere, either Europe or Asia. My original plan was I should just like take a year off and go to Europe. Just get the travel bug out of my system and then come back fresh to Canada and start working and start a life like that. So I was deciding to backpack across Europe. I didn't have a credit card and I didn't have a lot of savings, so I didn't have enough money to just like take a year off and go backpacking across Europe. Actually, I met a friend in my college. Her name is Andrea, and I think because of her, I decided Asia. So she went to Korea for a year before we started at college, and I was telling her I was thinking about traveling or whatever, and she recommended I should teach English. I had never thought about teaching English because I didn't really like English. I didn't know anything about English. I mean, I could speak English, but I didn't know how to teach English. I didn't have like an education degree. So I was like, I don't think I could be an English teacher. But she's kind of explained to me in Asia, but it's mostly about speaking and listening, and it's more like English conversation rather than like grammar-focused English. She gave me her diary, a 1 year diary she had taken while she was in Korea. And I think I read it in an entire weekend. I just spent the whole weekend reading her entire year's worth of adventures in Korea, and it just sounded awesome. Not only was like the job sounded kind of fun and interesting, the people she was meeting like on a daily basis was awesome. The food she was eating, then on the weekends she would travel to different parts of Korea, sometimes like big cities, sometimes like nature or mountains or lakes. And it just, all the adventures she had sounded like so much fun, even like the parties or whatever she talked about. It sounded like a really amazing lifestyle, and I was like, wow, I would love to do that for a year. So that's why I decided I think I want to go to Asia for a year. At that time, there wasn't much social media. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. There was internet, of course, and Google, and that kind of stuff. So I did do my research on Asia, teaching English. I had never, that's the thing about Asia, I never considered going to Asia because I just didn't know anything about Asia. I'd never been to Asia. I didn't have any friends who were from Asia, really. I had like one Chinese friend, but he was born in Canada, so he doesn't really count. And I just had never come into contact with anything Asian. I didn't really eat Asian food. I'd never tried Japanese food at the time. I really didn't know the language, the culture, anything about China or Korea or any part of Asia, Vietnam or Japan or anything. So I came in completely blind, just where should I teach English? So when I kind of searched online, internet, the three main places that would come up for teaching English that seemed like viable were China, Korea, and Japan. Going to the forums and reading people's blogs, I found that the top two most reputable were Japan and Korea. China kind of seemed like it was the most sketchy in terms of teaching English. The schools were sometimes fake. They promised a whole bunch of stuff they didn't deliver. The money wasn't very good, or it was promised to be good but you never got paid, stuff like that. So I was deciding between Japan and Korea. And Andrea went to Korea, so that was kind of a reason I was thinking Korea. Also Korean food, I started to try Korean food in Chinatown in Toronto, and I liked Korean food, I like spicy food. And in general, Korea seemed like a nice place to teach English. However, reading forums and stuff from people, like I said, at that time there was no social media, so it was just forums or stuff on the internet. And according to the forums, a lot of teachers who went to Korea, they would be like harassed or something on the train at the time. I don't know, maybe that was like earlier times. They weren't respected at all, so their schools would like kind of like a dime a dozen, like didn't treat them with any respect. They got fired like out of the blue after like a week, or the school just decided to close down, and then so they just like said bye, and they didn't provide any kind of support or anything. Also, Korea seemed to promise a lot more, which sounded good. They promised a free apartment, free flight there and back, and a good salary and everything, but it kind of seemed like too good to be true, because a lot of people are complaining that they never got what they were promised. So that was kind of like a little bit scary to me, because I didn't want to go to a foreign country where I don't know the language, don't know anything about it, just go there and like after a week be told, oh sorry, we can't pay you and we can't give you a flight back, and you can't stay in this apartment and this job is done, bye. And I wouldn't know what to do. So I thought, I don't know if I can trust that. So Japan seemed to be the most reliable in terms of contract and getting what they state they would do for you. I didn't see a lot of forum posts or anything about Japanese schools closing down, or Japanese managers or whatever not paying you or kicking you out of your apartment, or not coming through on what they promised. Just in terms of the country itself, Japanese currency was higher, so it would be better for me to make money. It would be almost equivalent to the Canadian dollar, so it seemed like better than to go to a country where the currency is not so strong. And also, I think the main reason was safety. It seemed like Japan was the safest country out of all of them. And on a smaller note that I probably mentioned in one of my other videos is I found some commercials online for Eon, which is a Eikaiwa conversation school in Japan, and it was using foreign people like Ewan McGregor and I think Mariah Carey and Cameron Diaz, people like that. So I figured this company seems like it's big enough to use celebrities from Hollywood, so they obviously have money, so they're probably like a more of a reputable company, and they've been, I think they were 20 years or 30 years running. So I thought it's a pretty good chance that that school will not go bankrupt and not, you know, closed down. So I decided to apply to Eon and to go to Japan. Originally I wanted to join the JET program, but when I was researching it I had missed the deadline and I would have to wait an entire year, and I didn't want to just waste another year in Toronto just working part-time or something. Coming to Japan was harder than I thought and easier than I thought. Getting the job was pretty easy. because I missed the deadline, I applied for Eon. And for Eon, basically, I went in the morning when I like applied to the company. They saw my resume and they invited me in for like a orientation / interview. And I walked in the morning. They did like an hour and a half kind of like orientation presentation where they talked about the company, they talked about Japan, they talked about living conditions and stuff like that. And then they did an interview, which was like 30 minutes, and then they wanted us to do like demo lessons, like a 10-minute demo lesson. I remember, because I'd never taught English before, I'd never taught anything, and I just like, on Google I typed in how to teach ESL, like something like that, and like something simple was like teaching colors using colorful candy like Smarties or M&Ms. So I think that was kind of the lesson that I did. And then they actually gave me a page of the Eon textbook that they make, that they use in Japan. And it was for like a really low level, early like, how are you, what's your name, my name is, nice to meet you, kind of like introduction page. And they just said, please pretend that we're students and just have us in pairs practice the dialogue together. So it wasn't really hard, so I did that, and I think there was like 30 of us, and they said, okay, please go away for like an hour, and then we'll give everybody an envelope. And if that envelope says that you're hired, then please stay. If that envelope says, sorry, you didn't make the cut, please leave. So that was kind of weird. But so I did that. I think I went for lunch, I came back, and I got my envelope, and the envelope said, congratulations, we would like to invite you for a second interview. But the second interview was the same day. It was like right there. So then I went into another room, and then they were like, oh, good job, blah, blah, blah. We were thinking about hiring you. So we just want to know like when you'd be available to start, what part of Japan you want to go to. And like I said, I had no idea anything about Japan, so I was like, wherever, I don't care. But I prefer to be like in a bigger city because I don't really know much about Japan. So like something that would be central Japan and something that would be like close to all the stuff that I would need to survive. So they said, okay, we'll get back to you. And like a week later they called me and they said, would you like to go to Nagoya? And I was like, yeah, sure. And they're like, can you go next month? And I was like, done. And that was it. That's how I got the job, and I decided to go to Japan. So that was the easy part. The hard part was two things: telling my parents and something called SARS. So my parents had no idea that I applied for Eon. They had no idea that I thought about Asia even. They had no idea I was thinking between Korea or Japan. I left all of that decision making out. I left it out of the loop for my parents, because every time I talked to my parents about leaving or doing something away from home, they would just shut it down. So I thought if I said, hey, I'm thinking about teaching English abroad in Asia, they would probably say, no, you're not doing that. I waited until I was officially offered the job, and I offered the date. And surprisingly, it was only a month advance, so it was kind of weird, because I had to tell my parents, oh, I decided I want to teach English in Asia, plus I decided Japan, plus I already applied, plus I already got hired, plus I leave next month. So I knew that was going to be a huge shock. Surprisingly though, my parents took it well. I was like, hey, I'm going to Asia, I'm going to Japan for a year. Yeah, I'm going to teach English. And of course they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I want to leave Toronto. My job right now is I can't really find a good job, and I kind of want to just go somewhere. And this isn't like backpacking, it's not like just fun vacation. It's like a 1 year I'll be working, so I'll be getting experience. And it's Japan, so it's a safe country and the currency is good, so I'll save some money and I'll come back. That way I can start a job and still have a little bit of like savings with me. So I made it pretty convincing to my parents, and they were like, okay, it's only a year, right? So I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay, I guess that's okay as long as you take care of all the paperwork and the flight details and all that stuff, which I did because the Aeon helped me with that stuff. That went surprisingly well. The second problem was tougher. It was SARS, and I don't know if you remember what SARS is, S-A-R-S. It was an epidemic, started in China. It was kind of like the bird flu kind of thing or something. It was like a virus, and I think it killed not a lot of people, but it killed a substantial amount of people, mostly like older people or children. Kind of like the first scary like swine flu kind of thing. And when it came out, it was in China, but the first case outside of China was in, I believe it's Vancouver. So it came to Canada next. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the first place that it happened in Toronto was the hospital where I was doing my internship for my college. And so with my 2-month internship, where I was the public relation assistant, I was supposed to do a whole bunch of like media stuff for the hospital, but SARS hit, and our hospital was the first place, I believe, in Toronto to get hit with SARS. One of our patients had it, and so our hospital was on lockdown for 10 days for quarantine. So I had to spend 10 days in quarantine. I wasn't allowed to leave anywhere. I wasn't allowed to do anything. It was really weird. Like, the hospital was pretty much closed down, and so when I would go to work, pretty much I would just be in a little small room by myself with a mask and all this like hand sanitizer and stuff. We didn't really do anything. There's only like one press release needed saying we have SARS, we're under quarantine, and that was done by the public relations woman. So I pretty much sat for like a month and a half doing really nothing, because everything that was supposed to happen, like we had the hospital had a different kind of events planned, but they all got cancelled because of the SARS stuff. So my internship was pretty boring, and I just got stuck in quarantine. And then on top of that, my apartment complex building area, the building next to mine was the first residential place to have a SARS victim. So once again, our building was kind of a quarantine. So I was another 10 days where I was kind of quarantined to my apartment building area. And then the biggest problem was Eon contacted me because I was supposed to leave right after my internship was over to go to Nagoya. And they were like, yeah, because of the SARS epidemic, we still want you to go, but there's been a request that I have to have quarantine in Japan. So as soon as I arrive from the airport, somebody's gonna pick me up and then take me to an apartment where I have to stay for 10 days before I can come to the Eon area to do training. And they sent me this package with like a heavy duty hardcore mask, like almost like a gas mask looking thing. And I had to wear that from all the way from the airport, on the plane, until I got out, while I was in the airport in Japan, all the way to my apartment. It was really tough because and they were so serious about it that even my plane, they didn't let anyone sit next to me. So that was cool. I had like 3 seats to myself, but I was kind of like quarantined off in my own section with a little mask, like with little brrr kind of like filter things in there, and it was really hot and annoying. But 12 hours on a plane with my mask, and then once I got out wearing my mask, I met the Eon representative or whatever who took me to my apartment. I had the mask on the whole time. And then I spent 10 days in quarantine. In 10 days at that time, there was no internet, I didn't have any entertainment, no books, nothing to do, nothing to read, I couldn't go outside. I watched Japanese TV for the first 10 days, and at that time I didn't speak any Japanese, so I didn't know what the hell was going on. The Eon representative would come every morning with a bag of groceries, and in the bag of groceries were like different things that I could eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it was like being in prison, kind of. So first 10 days in Japan were pretty shit. My first year was so awesome. It was amazing because, of course, the Eon was fun because it was something new. I had to train for like a week. They do a really intensive training, which was good because I never taught English, I'd never taught anything. So it was kind of good to get a grasp of what I'm expected to do in the classroom. And Eon is a very structured class program thing, so it's really good for people who have no idea what they're doing. It's a step-by-step teacher for dummies kind of company that doesn't just throw you into a classroom. It's like very, very structured, so which is what I needed. It was good. And I did that for the first year. I got to meet so many people. So I was an adults teacher, so I actually didn't meet any kids. My students were pretty much the age of 18 to like 80, and they ranged anywhere from like university student to like retired senior citizen to like salaryman or whatever. So not only was it awesome because I met so many people, but I met people from so many different backgrounds and so many different ages. So I kind of got a good, I don't know, grasp of what Japanese population, the people of Japan were like. The teachers I trained with, we became so close, and we were like all first time to Japan. We were all pretty young, right out of university, and we didn't know anything about Japan, so we kind of learned together. So it was really fun because we spent pretty much every weekend together. We go trips together. We went to Kyushu and Tokyo and all these different places together on holiday. Yeah, it was just really fun meeting like three or four new friends. I've met a friend, my friend Justin from Ottawa, who I'm still talked to and Facebook friends with. I met my friend Jason, who's from Australia, who now owns a restaurant in France. I met a girl named Phoenix from America, and my 1 year in Japan was so awesome. Which is why I decided to stay and re-contract with Eon. The second year was not so awesome. The problem was all my friends that I made, they decided to go back to America, Australia, or wherever. So I was like the only continuing teacher of my circle of friends. Second year was really lonely, and it was like a shock because I had been surrounded, like I was in that English bubble, so I hadn't learned any Japanese really. I'd learned like a few basic phrases here and there, but most of my time at work is English, and most of my time outside of work was also English. So I kind of regretted my first year. I enjoyed it a lot, but I didn't learn anything about Japan. So my second year was kind of screwed because I didn't speak Japanese, I didn't have any Japanese friends, and I didn't have any foreign friends either, and I was kind of stuck teaching at the same school I was at. So that kind of sucked, but it got me more focused on learning Japanese. That's when I started getting into more Japanese culture. I started going to Japanese bars and restaurants on my own. I started listening to Japanese music and watching Japanese movies. I just got more into the Japanese culture. I started meeting more Japanese people and learning more Japanese. So that really helped a lot, I guess, in terms of Japanese. And then, right at the end of the second year is where I met Miho, which became my Japanese girlfriend at the time. And so that's why I stayed another year. Rather than go back after my second year, I extended them for another year. We moved to Canada and we got married. But that's a whole different video. So although I was enjoying Japan and I had a girlfriend and who became my fiance, who became my wife, life in Japan was really good. I'd switched jobs. So I wasn't working at Eon, I was working at a different company. So I was making more money than I was at Eon. I was living in a nicer apartment because I was living with Miho, so we were living in a nice 2-bedroom apartment. I had made some new friends, like my friend Pat, who was one of my best friends who passed away a couple of years ago from cancer. So why did I leave? One of the reasons was because of Miho. She had never left Japan, she'd never lived abroad, and she really wanted to try living in Canada. Another reason was my parents, because I had told my parents and my sister that I'm only going to be gone for a year, but it'd been like 3 years, almost 4 years now. So I kind of felt like I should go back to my family as well. Another reason for me was I think I started panicking because I had been in Japan, I'd been teaching English, but I was thinking back to my actual educational background, and my background was in media and communications. And although I was using English, which is good, I felt like if I don't put my skills to use for my degree or whatever, then I'm gonna kind of like burn that bridge and I won't be able to do any jobs in that field. And since I spent like 5-6 years in school paying for that kind of a degree, I should have a job related to that. So I decided I should definitely go back to Canada because my Japanese wasn't high enough at all to work in Japan in that kind of field. So I was like, I should go back to Canada, go back to Toronto, and find a job in that field. And one final reason, which I kind of think back to now, was I was getting tired of Japan. I mean, I love Japan, and I'm back again now, which is in another video I'll be talking about why. I had reached the limit to what I could stand. Things started bothering me. Even though my life was good, I was not happy in Japan. People around me were really nice. My coworkers were great, my wife was great, my friends were great, but just little things about Japanese society started bothering me. I don't know how to explain it, but everything became so like I felt so shallow to me. Like the way people dress, or the way people talk, or the kind of fakeness of society started creeping up on me. And that kind of scared me because I really like Japan, I love Japan, and Japanese food, Japanese people, Japanese culture is all really interesting to me. I started feeling more gaijin than I was. I mean, I was a foreigner, of course, and of course I've maybe talked about this before, but if you're a foreigner in Japan, you're always going to be an outsider no matter what. No matter if you can speak Japanese fluently, no matter if you marry a Japanese person, have half Japanese kids, you're always going to be an outsider. I think I mentioned this in my other videos. So I knew that, but I was feeling even more left out. I don't know why. I had a Japanese wife, but the more I stayed in Japan, the more I felt like people are looking at me like I shouldn't be here. And I think that was in my own head. I started feeling that. I was feeling more outcast or outsider. And I think it was kind of my brain telling me, maybe you just miss home a lot and you need to go back. So I thought, rather than staying like another year or another couple of years, or staying forever and hating this country and hating the people and just being like a grumpy gaijin walking around just pissed off at everybody, I thought before it comes to that, I should maybe go back to Canada. So I decided, yeah, maybe I should go back to Canada. And that's why I came to Japan and why I left. So there you go. That's the first part, I guess, of my life, of why I came to Japan and why I left. Of course, now if you've been watching my channel, you know I live in Japan. So the next video I'll be making eventually will be why I came back to Japan. And in that, I will tell you about my life in Canada once I came back to Japan, how I felt, and what I liked, what I didn't like about it, and why I decided to come back to Japan, and what I think about Japan now. So stay tuned for part 2, I guess. If you watched this far, please type in I like donuts, and also in the comment section write anything you want about your experiences living abroad, or if you have any questions for me, whatever you want, comment section, please leave it there. And I think I will end this video now, so thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up and share this video if you enjoyed it. Also, if you're interested in a whole bunch of bonus videos that I release once a week, check out my Patreon page. You also get like a diary, a song of the month. I also send out stuff to the people, and there's a lot of bonus Patreon stuff there for you. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel because my videos are awesome. OzzyAwesome. Take care and see you next time.